What's up, everyone? Welcome to Blazers Uprise. I'm Eric Brandt, bringing you this week's mailbag. If you have questions for future mailbags, leave them in the comments below. And we had a lot of similar questions this week, so I tried to answer at least one question. And I might not have answered your specific question, but I'll try to answer them within the other question, if that makes sense. And let's get right into them. The first question comes from Portland Made. He asks, do you think our defense will be top 10 or 20? I believe we have the pieces to be a top 10 defense, maybe not top 5, but if we're not around 10th or better in defense of rating by the end of the season, I think that we're not using our personnel correctly. We have several good defenders. We pretty much have a decent defender that can guard every position, so there's no excuse if we get a lead to not have defensive lineups out there, or if we need to stop at the end of the game, we have the pieces to make a stop. So I don't think there's a lot of excuses for the defense being as bad as it was last year. If it is, it might lead to questions about the coaching staff and how prepared they are to handle a defense, but I do believe it will be around top 10 or better. All right, B99 is asked, do you see Stotts being on the hot seat if this team doesn't perform to expectations? So you guys know that watch Blazers Uprise that Tori and I are not big fans of Coach Stotts. And one of the problems has been his inability to adjust to personnel or to switch up his schemes when they're not working. For example, last year we had the injury problem. I don't think he has that excuse this year. Olshey even laid it out in his media availability the other day that he does not think the personnel is going to be an issue this year. And he basically laid down the gauntlet and said, I've given you the tools to succeed. Now you better succeed. So I think it's on Stotts this year. So I could see his seat getting pretty warm if they fail to live up to expectations. The issue is I don't see that happening. So I don't want Stotts to be so bad this year that he gets fired, because that means the Blazers wasted an opportunity with a really good team in Dame's prime to contend for a title possibly. So if he gets fired this year, I'm going to be really disappointed. I'm not such a big Stotts hater that I don't want this team to perform well and do well under him. I'd rather see them win a championship and be wrong about Stotts not being able to get that done than to see them completely choke that opportunity away and never win under Stotts, because that doesn't help anyone. So I do want Stotts to make the necessary adjustments. If he doesn't, he's probably going to be in trouble or gone at the end of the season. As far as who would take over, if it was during the season, it would just be one of the assistants, like Nate Tibbetts would probably get promoted to interim coach, and then they'd look for a new coach the following offseason. I don't really see that happening during the year this year, though, so I think Stotts is our coach for this year, and we'll see what happens. I don't really have a specific name for who I'd want to take over. I do really like Jerry Stackhouse from Vanderbilt. I really like his coaching style, the way he breaks down film and holds players accountable. I don't know if he'd be a fit for the Blazers necessarily, but that's a name to watch for moving forward. Our next question comes from That Dame Fan. He asks, do you think this season will be Dame's best shot at a championship in his career? I think it will be. It's kind of hard to say completely, because anytime you make the Western Conference Finals, that's actually a legitimate shot. You're one of the last 4 teams left. But in terms of overall and just depthness of this roster, if that's a word, I think this team is the best from like 1 to 12 that he's had in his career. And they should be able to really expose a lot of teams in the shortened season with being able to throw different lineups and different skill sets at different teams. They can match up with pretty much any team outside of maybe the Lakers are a tough matchup, but they're a tough matchup for everyone coming off a title. So, yeah, I think this is his best shot. I don't know if that'll necessarily pan out to contention, but I think if he's going to get it done, this is definitely the best bench he's ever had. And that'll go a long way to getting him some rest throughout the season. I believe we could cut his minutes a little bit and still win a lot of games. So I look for him to be a little fresher going into the playoffs. And then hopefully by that time we've made some adjustments to learn how to play him off the ball, or in a situation where he doesn't have to dribble up the court into double teams as much. And that will take pressure off of him in playoff series. And I think that'll be best for this team. But yeah, I do think this will end up being his best shot. Patriotic Truth News asks, here is a real question. NBA.com has given the Blazers the number 2 spot in the West with the moves everyone has made. Where do you think this current Blazers lineup stacks up against the West? Go Blazers. Well, I agree that number 1 is definitely the Lakers. They're going to be tough to beat. They reloaded with some pretty good talent this offseason. Don't know how it'll all fit together, but they definitely upgraded some of their positions and role players, and we'll see how that works out. I don't think the Blazers are necessarily better than them. Now, it doesn't mean they can't beat them in a playoff series, but I think that's going to be their toughest competition this year. The Clippers, if they get things together, kind of figure things out after their meltdown in the playoffs last year, I think they'll be near the number 2 spot. And that leaves the Blazers fighting with Denver, in my opinion, for 3 and 4. I think they're better than teams like Utah, Houston, Golden State without Klay Thompson. The Suns, I'm probably missing some teams, but I think the Blazers are just a little bit better than some of those other teams. And with the condensed season, there might be a lot of load management and players resting and stuff on the two LA teams. So I could see them sneaking up and maybe getting into that 2 range, but probably right in that 2 to 4 range, I would say, if everything goes right this season without injuries. All right, NBA Forever asks, what do you see the projected starting lineup to be, and what do you want the starting lineup to be? I feel like if we start Rocco and Zach together, spacing could be a problem. I see Dame, CJ Hood, Rocco, Nurk being okay on spacing and okay on defense. Thoughts? Yeah, so we learned in Olshay's presser that Zach looks like he's going to be out about a month, so that could help kind of give everyone a little chance to prove themselves before he comes back and see where he fits in. Now, that could be that the team is playing so well that Zach might not have a spot back in the rotation immediately, or it could mean that someone's struggling and Zach could just come in and fill that hole right away, kind of like a midseason trade. So there's a lot of options there. I think for sure Dame, CJ, Rocco, and Nurk will be starting, so the only question is who starts in that last spot. If Hood is fully healthy, I think they might give him his starting job back. I could also see Derek Jones Jr. being put in that spot as well. It might be a rotating thing too, like just depending on the matchups. Like some teams we could go big against, some teams we could go smaller. Some teams would be more athletic or faster. Some teams play more of a slowdown style, so we could go maybe like tougher defensive wise. But yeah, there's a lot of options. We're 11 deep, and we have the pieces to play kind of any style. So I really like all the opportunities. I kind of want Hood to start if he's healthy because if you have Melo and Cantor off the bench, I think then it would help to have a Derek Jones Jr. Where you could have a little bit of defensive help for those two. Cantor and Melo both played all right on defense in Stotts' system. And in the second unit, it won't be quite as noticeable as playing with the starters. But I think you need kind of a defensive stopper in there, and then you combine Trent at the 2. So Trent provides shooting and defense, so he's a really good fit in either the starting lineup or the bench unit. But unfortunately for him, he's kind of stuck behind CJ, so he won't be able to start. I expect CJ to be the backup point guard, so you're looking at CJ, Trent, Derek Jones Jr., Melo, and Cantor, which I think is a really, really good bench, probably up there with the best benches in the league, and kind of like just having a really good bench that you can depend on. You have some defensive stoppers, you have some guys who can get buckets. Yeah, you could just give it to Melo to try and score if you need a bucket. Cantor can score in the post as well. And then both Cantor and Derek Jones are very good offensive rebounders, so if you are giving Melo or CJ a lot of ISO opportunities, that allows them to crash the boards and maybe get some easy putbacks as well. So I think that would be my preferred lineup. I'm not sure if they'll start Derek Jones or Hood at the 3, but I kind of like either way. I don't think it'll really matter too much. It'll matter more who's playing well and what they do at the end of games. All right, Ocean Boy says, I'm willing to trade Zach Collins. He's overrated in my opinion. Good, not great. Thought? I would not trade Zach Collins. The reason is when you have a player who's been injured and hasn't really had the ability to show what he can do yet, you don't trade those guys. Their value is too low. It's the same that I'd say about Anthony Simons right now. He's better off just staying on the end of our bench and developing and just letting go, if not, because if you trade him and he breaks out, then you're going to be mad and you got ripped off in a trade because you wouldn't have gotten a really good piece back for him. But the only thing I'll say to that is if we determine that Zach Collins going into the last year of his contract before he's a restricted free agent next offseason, if we determine that he's not a part of our core moving forward, then sure, move off of him. But I still believe he will be a rotational piece. I think he's an important piece to a championship team. He's a glue guy who plays good defense and can knock down some shots. He's a smart player. I think I would hold on to him. I think he fits well with the starting lineup. He was 9-3 in games that he started last year. Maybe not indicative of his play necessarily, but it's not like we struggled in games he played, considering we were way under 500 in the other games that he did not start. So I'm still willing to give Zach Collins a chance. I don't think it's a good idea to trade him. Just hope that he gets healthier. With how deep this team is, I think we can bring him off the bench slowly and kind of work him back into a role. Hopefully he can get healthier that way. But yeah, I don't like trading players when their value is low. Next question is from Peace and Love. With all these new signings, will Nasir Little be in the rotation this season? I was hoping to see more of him. I was too, but he'll be in the second year of a 4-year rookie deal. I don't think it's necessarily important that we play him right away. It would have been nice to get him some minutes, but it's pretty much go time for Dame's prime. We need these next couple years to play more proven players. I want to say that Little might be so good that he'll work his way into the rotation, hopefully. It would be awesome to see players like Ant and Little just be so dominant in practice that they earn minutes and then take the most of those opportunities once they get playing time. With Hood maybe being brought in slow, he might get a chance at the beginning of the season to play some sparing minutes, and we'll see if he takes advantage of those. But I really don't see a path for playing time for Little this year. There's just too many good players on this team and too many in front of him. But a lot of those players might not be on the team the following season. So I think as long as he works his butt off this year, gets his shot looking better, which it was towards the end of last season, and works on his ball handling a little bit, which it also appears he's doing. He seems, by all accounts, to be an extremely hard worker. I have no doubt that he will be in the rotation come next season, but probably not this one. Russell, first round exit Westbrook, asks of our young core of players, CJ, I'm assuming that's CJ Ellaby, not McCollum, Trent Little, Zach Giles, Simons, and Jones Jr., which do you see having the biggest impact on the Blazers this year? Which has the best career overall? Of the players you listed, I definitely think Trent will have the biggest impact this year, simply because he has already proven that he is a 3-and-D guy. He played tremendous defense for us. He shot the ball really well towards the end of last season. So I think he'll get more of an opportunity than the other guys. Zach, if he's healthy, could factor into that. And of course, Jones Jr. was our big signing this year. So of course, he could also be that. I will say if Jones Jr. learns how to shoot a little better, he could definitely be that kind of guy. But the safe bet here would be Trent, considering he has already proven to be useful and a rotational player for this team. As far as the best career overall, that's an extremely tough question for me, because a lot of these guys, like a Nasir Little or an Anthony Simons, aren't going to get much playing time this year. Whereas if they were on a crappy rebuilding team, they might be starting and getting like 25, 30 minutes a game. So I have not given up on either of those guys. I still think both of them can be really good in this league and top-notch players. But I think that it's a little tough to see that happening on the Blazers long term. But I wouldn't rule it out for it happening here, and I hope it does. It's just really hard to project that. I wouldn't say Ellaby is just second-round pick. I'm just hoping for him to become a good shooter and a rotational piece. I don't think he would have a better career than some of those other guys like Trent, who has already proven to be that kind of player. Trent definitely has the lowest floor, or the highest floor of all those guys, since, like I just said, he's already proven it. Giles still has a shot at being a really good player, but he's had injury problems as well. but I don't know if that's going to be with Portland either, because it's going to be really hard to retain him if he plays really well after this season. And then that leaves Zach Collins. So I'm going to say Zach Collins will still have the best career overall. I think he'll get healthy and just be a really quality big man, defensive specialist. I know it's not anything flashy or over the top exciting because it doesn't show up in the box sheet. He'll never be like a 20 point per game scorer, anything like that. But like I said, he does a lot of the little things to help a team win. And I think that can lead to a long career and will lead to him being a really solid big for many years. Thomas Oransky asks, underrated two-way signing. Man, I was so disappointed that they signed Dame's cousin Blevins to a two-way. I think that's a huge waste. The rules were set up this year to basically have 2 free chances to find a diamond in the rough. Now, I'm not saying these two-way guys will be like seeing playing time this year. Obviously, we're too deep for that, but it's a useful tool. You got to bring in 2 guys. They get to play up to 50 games this year. They get to practice every practice. Unlike most two-way contracts in previous years, they can only be on the team for 45 days. So it's like having 2 extra young guys on your roster that you could try to develop. And I feel like they wasted one of those on someone who will never really be an NBA player. I'm just really disappointed in that. But as far as the other two-way contract, I hope they give it to Jalen Horde. I felt like he showed a lot of promise last year, and I hope he's willing to re-sign, and he liked playing for the Blazers. So I'm hoping that that'll bring him back to Portland. But yeah, I don't really know where else to go if not just go after whatever the best undrafted rookie is. But every year you see a couple guys that were on two-way contracts or undrafted that go on to become rotational players. You can just look at Duncan Robinson and Kendrick Nunn from the Heat this year. So it's not an opportunity you want to waste. Like, you need to do scouting and take advantage of those opportunities. I feel like we wasted one. So I'm bummed out about that. But anyways, yeah, I hope Jalen Horde is the other one. I'll kind of salvage it a little bit. But yeah, two ways. I know you're probably thinking, why would this guy be upset about a two-way contract? It's not a big deal, but to me it is. And if you're a GM of a basketball team, it should be a big deal to you. And I feel like it wasn't based on the person we signed. So I'm hoping Horde is the other one. I'm Bringing Chili says, can you explain how pick protections work? You guys are the only ones I trust to truly teach me this. Thanks, Chili. But so a protection would be like, so for example, the Blazer trade with Robert Covington. We sent them the number 16 pick along with a future first round pick. Now, the number 16 pick is easy. It already is set what number it is and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, here's the 16th pick, straight, it just goes across. But when you're trading a future pick, you want to protect it so that you kind of limit how good it could be, if that makes sense. So if the Blazers, for some reason, didn't make the playoffs last year and end up with a season like the Warriors had this year and get the number 2 pick, if we didn't protect that pick we sent to Houston, then they would get the number 2 pick. So you want to protect it in a way, but you both have to agree upon it. So Houston had to agree that if it was that high, they wouldn't get it. But so you want to do that because there's been several times, it doesn't happen much anymore, where someone traded an unprotected pick. See Boston and the Nets with the big Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce trade, where the Nets owed Boston several first-round picks that were unprotected, and they ended up being like top 3 picks. One of them ended up being the number 1 pick. So you don't want to like just give teams unprotected picks. Now, sometimes, like in the case of, say, the Clippers or the Lakers trading for a superstar like Anthony Davis or Paul George, you might want to give unprotected picks just because that's what the other team wants. So if for example, the Blazers traded for Giannis, we probably have to trade several unprotected picks to make that work. You're not going to be able to get a superstar player for like protected picks, but like Houston protected 1 through 4, some of their picks they sent Oklahoma City for Westbrook. So just in case they're super bad, they would maybe keep those picks. But in the case of the Blazers and the Robert Covington one, so in 2021, if we're picks 1 through 14, we keep the pick and the pick moves over to the next year. If the pick goes to 15 through 30, we would give that pick to Houston in the 2021 draft. and then our obligation for the trade would be fulfilled, and that trade would be completed. If it doesn't happen in 2022, so each pick can be protected however the two teams agree upon it. But so this particular one just happens to be 1 through 14 protected for the next 7 drafts. And if it doesn't convey by the 2027 draft, it would turn into 1 second in the 2027 draft. But that would mean we wouldn't make the playoffs for the next 7 years. I don't think that's going to happen. So I think it's fairly safe to say that that pick will convey this year. And but yeah, you just want to protect picks just to limit it, the small possibility that it could end up being good. Like, let's say you barely miss the playoffs and you have the 14th pick and you just happen to get lucky and move up to the first pick. Especially now that they pick further amounts. It used to just be the top 3 got the top. They drew in the lottery for the top 3 teams. Now it goes further than that, so you have a little bit better chance of moving up even if you're later in the lottery. So yeah, that's just all it is. Our last question of the week comes from Jacob Allen. He says, how do you see Atlanta's moves working out? Seems like they will be a very good team offensively. Not sure how they will put it together defensively. I'm kind of torn on Atlanta. So their moves definitely put them in a position to make the playoffs and be a decent team. I just don't like when teams that are super young and have a chance at maybe developing a really good core make a splash like that on more veteran type players. It's more of a win now move or make the playoff type move versus putting together an absolute contending roster. It could work out for them. I just don't see them being good enough to contend in the East the next couple of years. But at the same time, they're good enough to not make the playoffs and get a high pick and keep adding to their young core. And I feel like they're a little too deep at some positions. Like, you already have a John Collins and then you sign Gallinari to a massive deal. You already have some like wings that you drafted last year, Cam Reddish, DeAndre Hunter, and Kevin Huerter the year before that. So I feel like they had some legitimate wing options already. So I don't know how Bogdanovich fits into that as well. And then you draft a Kongwu and you already have Capella. And so they're also really deep team. Anytime you have Trae Young, I think it's going to be hard to be a top-notch defending team. But I think they'll be okay defensively and really good offensively, like you mentioned. So, yeah, I expect them to make the playoffs, maybe even as high as like the 5th or 6th seed. I just don't see them as being good enough to contend to come out of the East. I don't really like just making moves to make the playoffs. I feel like Phoenix did that this year too. And it could work out to make the playoffs, but I like just building towards a championship versus simply building to get out of the lottery. That's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. I just want to say I really appreciate everyone's viewership over the last couple weeks. It's been a lot of fun between free agency, the Robert Covington trade, and the draft. It's been good to go on this journey with you, and hope to have a lot more of you watch throughout the year. If you're not subscribed to our other channel, Blazers Uprise Live, make sure you do that if you want to see some of our weekly shows and live streams. And then don't forget, during the season, we will have a post-game show after every single Blazers game. And believe it or not, that's less than 4 weeks away from actual regular season basketball. That's crazy. But it's going to happen fast, and the season's going to go by fast. And we'll be here at Blazers Uprise for you. And yeah, should be a lot of fun. Anyways, have a good one, everyone. For Blazers Uprise, I'm Eric Brandt. Peace out. Go Blazers.